Hi everyone, welcome to Roaming Elsewhere. I hope you guys are doing absolutely great. So I'm in Goa and this time I decided to indulge in local and cultural experiences in Goa, and that's why I decided to live in a 350-year-old Indo-Portuguese colonial mansion. This gorgeous villa overlooks a vast green lawn dotted with palm trees. Perfect for an evening stroll or just sitting back and relaxing. Right ahead of the lawn is a grand pool where I loved unwinding with some refreshing swims. This place drifts you away into solitude, away from the bustling crowd of Goa, the cacophony of today's life. Honestly, everything about this place felt so majestic that even sipping my regular tea on the porch felt like a grand affair. Tucked away in the peaceful village of Benaulim, Silva Heritage is this incredible Indo-Portuguese mansion that takes you straight back to a bygone era. It's one of the few grand mansions still standing, with a mix of Portuguese Catholic and subtle Hindu influences that's just so rare to find. So right now we are with Smita, who is the owner of this beautiful mansion, and she will tell us the highlights of this property and everything that all the history that has to unfold before our eyes through this villa. Smita, thank you for talking to us.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about this painting that you see behind us. It is the scene of Vasco da Gama touching the Indian subcontinent for the first time. When he comes, you can see the local population. They are very curious to see a white-skinned man for perhaps the very first time. The Zamorin, who is the local ruler at that time, he sends a palanquin to receive Vasco da Gama. When he finally enters the court, the Zamorin asks him, "What have you brought me?" And he says, "I have some hats and sugar and silk." And the Zamorin is completely unimpressed with that. And for us, the only thing that impressed was gold. So the Zamorin is not willing to let him trade at Calicut. But yet, Vasco da Gama goes back with pepper, and that pepper fetches him money that is 60 times the value of the voyage. When he goes back to Portugal, he's accorded a hero's welcome, and the king quickly realizes that this could be a very lucrative trade for the country. And post that, the colonization of the subcontinent begins. So while we walk, I'll tell you about this well. Back in the day, supposing you had a property and this was mine and that was the neighbor's, it would not be odd to have a well in the middle of the boundary of those two properties, which meant that either I could use the water of this well or the neighbors could. Because as Goans, we have always believed that you must help each other. The community survives if it is together. So I have been told when I was trying to research the house and I visited the neighbor's house, Mr. Dias, he told me that some generations ago a lady from this house was married into his house, and because she wanted to talk to her mother, she insisted with her husband that he built this balcony. So that she could talk a little bit more easily. So our architect is actually Anuradha Goglani. She's researched Goan windows, and all these windows, if you visited the Shandor house, this window is a replica of one of those windows from that house. And if you notice, these are oyster shells. They are illegal to harvest today, but we traveled all over Goa to find somebody who had these shells, and in a remote village in Moira. This window as well has the original glass. Glass came into Goa in the late 1800s, so it's not 350-year old like the rest of the house, but it is at least 200 years old, which is still quite amazing.
Yeah, 2 centuries, man.
Yes, and this is the original glass. French windows have an interesting story. In the 1800s, there was a plague that hit old Goa, and everybody started dying. So all they could do is abandon the city and move to a new place. So the Portuguese doctors were unable to kind of deal with the plague. They didn't know how to combat it. So they asked the local Vaids. So they said, if you want to get rid of this and you don't want this to happen again, what you need to do is let enough of sunlight and air into your rooms. Because sunlight is the best disinfectant. So what started off in church architecture then made its way to rich landlords' houses. So you will see that these long windows, we call them French windows, but the Portuguese word for it is sacada. And it lets enough of sunlight and air in.
And now, finally, it's time to take a sneak peek into this 350-year-old grand historic villa.
So this is the main banquet hall where all the entertaining would happen. Originally, the whole frontal section was 2 banquet halls, with a door that would lead between the two. But I want to show you something very interesting. Here is the portrait of Vicente Francisco Silva, and he was the mayor of Salsette, which was a very big chunk of the Portuguese Empire. He was a very important man. He had a lot of land and a retinue of servants, and which is he had a very prominent place. That's why this house is probably so large. There's so much of land around the house that belonged to the family. Very interestingly, outside the doorway, if you see, there are the initials VFDS. So that was not always there. When we got our hands in the house, there was a brown paint over it. It has to be something. So we thought we'd take a chance. We got the experts who would do churches, and we asked them to see. And under 9 layers of very stubborn paint, they found the initials of Vicente Francisco Silva. And very interestingly, we noticed these 2 chairs with exactly the same initials. In the house of the descendants of this man, and we offered to purchase them because it's such a connection, right? We did not know this existed. We didn't know that existed. We just discovered both of these two, and we had to put it together. That picture there is an original. It was gifted by the owners of the house, Olim. This picture is usually depicted when somebody prays for a husband who's gone astray. So Mother Mary is basically saving the man from the demon.
Okay.
And an angel is offering fruits to her. It's an original. We've not touched it. I don't think we can redo it. We just
Yeah.
prefer to leave it how it is.
So this house takes you to a bygone era where you can witness a classic Susegard Goan lifestyle.
In the altar in all Goan homes,
Hmm.
you can see these little places. It is to keep statues.
Yeah.
And as is customary, a Goan bride, when she would get married, in her dowry there would be ivory statues. And there were ivory statues here, but because the house was not lived in for 70 years, somebody just walked in one day, took the statues, and disappeared.
But thankfully, some are there.
Something
To
is
treasure.
there, whatever is there. For me, the altar itself is a marvel. It's a huge altar,
Yeah.
so that is great to have.
Walking through the house, I felt like every corner had a story to tell, a glimpse of its glorious past. There's even a photo wall that shows the house in its earlier ruined state, and honestly, seeing how it's being transformed into this masterpiece, it's just amazing. So this is an angan of this house. This is also called Rosh Angan. It's a place where women used to get together. So these were two houses, and later it was united and made into one house. But earlier it was a Hindu and Catholic house. And in our tradition, ladies used to sit in angan and make pickles and do crochet and all of these things. So this angan is that kind of place. So this house has a lot of Indian touch to it also. So what absolutely intrigues me about this place are the artifacts, 100 and 200-year-old artifacts that have been found in this house, which makes this place unique. Another interesting thing about this villa is each room in this villa does not have number to it. Instead, they have given a Portuguese name to each of this room. For example, this room is called Ines. I stayed in the Margula room, which was so spacious and spotless. It had this lovely vintage charm and views that added to the whole vibe of the place. Even though these rooms have all the modern facilities, but there is this timeless character to it that has been maintained.
So there's nothing called a Portuguese house. All the houses that you see today are houses that have been worked by Goan artisans. So I like to call them Goan houses or Indo-Portuguese because they are influenced by a lot of that style. Even the architecture that you see here will not be there in Portugal because it is shaped by the weather, which is why the sloping roofs have to be there, which is why the mango tiles have to be there. You will not find this in Portugal. So it is a unique Goan house. The balcony, the sit-outs were not. So that came because they wanted people to be a little more social. So those were molded by their thinking, yes. But they are still unique to Goa only. You will not find these houses anywhere else in Goa.
Fresh coconut. Yeah. The coconut is also dry roasted. Huh? This one is only for you. I will show you the how it is. Yeah.
What really stood out to me, though, were the traditional Goan experiences they introduced us to every evening.
Yes. Each one is a
On day
brand.
one, we learned how to make Goan curry and, of course, devoured it with the fellow guests. On day two, we had a fun feni tasting session. So we are here to enjoy a feni tasting session with Silva Heritage. Feni is the traditional drink of Goa, and we're gonna know how feni is made, kaju feni is made, and how it should be served, and how we should drink it traditionally. That is what we're gonna do. So very excited to do this activity, and this activity is on the house. So super excited. And let me not forget the heritage style restaurant of this property. The food was absolutely delicious, so good that we didn't feel the need to step out and try other places. It is also famous among the locals, and our last night there, with live music and their wonderful company, was the perfect way to wrap up our stay.